This is the Raidmax x603. Ignoring how awesome the combination of Raid and Mags already is, this case is really interesting. It comes with a surprising amount of compatibility given the price segment we're in, and it has a wave-like structure or mesh structure in the front, partially covered by this piece of plastic with the company logo on it. Generally speaking, it looks good and very promising, and I do not say that lightly, because already after the first minute of examining the case, I could see a very strong resemblance of the main chassis compared to basically every budget case you can find under the sky. Yeah, you can already see by where and how the I/O is placed who is at some point behind the manufacturing process of a case. However, to my surprise, it's above that. It is a tick better in most things. It's kinda the OP version of the budget case that everybody took and slapped a individual front panel on. But let's not get ahead of ourselves and go over the what and what nots. This 487mm high, 470mm long and 220mm wide mid-tower case comes inside the usual case-like box, but already here a small plus point, because instead of the older styrofoam that breaks and crumbles once you touch it, they used this more rubber-like one, which can be repurposed indefinitely, which is really nice for us because we need to put the case back in the box afterwards to store it, so good job there. Inside we won't find a lot of information or accessories except for a little cotton box hidden inside the hard drive bracket containing the really minimum amount of stuff that they could possibly fit in there. After recovering from that minor disappointment, let's get to the next one. Both the metal back and tempered glass side panel are using the much more appreciated rail mechanic to slide them in, but none of them are mounted down using catching screws, something that Raidmax should or could have definitely looked into, considering how many of these catching screws you need to buy or need to replace before you will see any price increase overall. But enough of the nagging, because from here on it's surprisingly higher quality than we have expected. For example, the tempered glass side panel. This thing is 4mm thick, something that we expect in Be Quiet, Fantex cases, but no, we got it in here. As for the CPU and GPU support, we got something of a treat, not too much, but still more than enough. For tower coolers, we can go up to 400mm high. No, I'm joking, the website has just the two lines switched up. It's 165mm of space for the CPU cooler and 400mm length for the GPU. Though keep in mind that 400 is the nicest number they could come up with, because as soon as you slap a radiator in the front, you are taking that away from the GPU, and then yeah, it's more like 375 if you use a front-mounted I/O. But for the CPU, this would translate to roughly a NHD 15 in case that you don't need to push the front fan up because of the RAM. And for the GPU, it even passed our RTX 4090 test, including the Octopus. We used the same 4090 Octopus in this build here, and although it has a slight bend once you close it, it's still okay. I would compare it to the average Fantex case. We had the, what was it called, G500A on the table 2 weeks ago, and it was roughly the same. On the top of the case, we will find the I/O composed of two USB 3.0, one of which is Type-C, combined audio in and out, a reset and power button, and the LED button for the lights, to which we will get later on. And by the way, the USB-C port is definitely 3.2 Gen 2. I hope I got this right. Based on the header, something that Raidmax should have noted somewhere. It's a selling point. For the drives, we can go with up to two 3.5-inch drives inside and on top of this hard drive bracket in the front of the power supply compartment. Or we just remove it and we allow the PSU to be much longer than the roughly 200mm restriction that it comes with. For 2.5-inch drives, we can mount them behind the motherboard plate. Oh, and before I forget, everything in between Mini ITX and ATX fits by default, and eATX only if you're willing to give up on these secret feature holes that we will talk about in about 2 minutes. And now let's get to the fan and radiator support, because that's truly where the case shines. In the front we got support for up to 3 120s or 140mm fans, and the top can house another 3 120s or 2 140s. And the back got the usual 1 120. All the front fan spots and the one in the back are already preoccupied to begin with one of Raidmax's own unnamed whatever the hell this is spinning at I have no clue how much RPM. And although all of them are 3-pin voltage controlled, taped together in a way that looks like the least amount of steps possible, and somebody just forgot that the back fan exists, I have to say that they are definitely quieter than what I am used to in a here you have 4 for free fans case. Like, they are spinning at the regular curve that the BIOS has by default on this ASRock, what is it, a B650E, and I mean, you can hear them, but it's really not annoying, so those are fine, those are really fine. We will talk more about the general cooling inside of this case, especially the way that these fans perform in the build video about the rig that you can see right here, but to give it an overall one-word opinion, they are okay. They really are, they do the job, so no need of replacing them outright. They will handle most builds. Plus, RGB implementation looks really solid with these fans. For free fans, this is better than I expected. But let's finish the fans part, because we are still not done. Not only does the front look kinda interesting, but it also feels really solid. Nothing moves, nothing wiggles, and the mesh doesn't seem to be too dense in a restrictive way. And I'm not sure about this because that's just outside of my expertise, but because of that waveform in the front, doesn't that create more holes per like centimeter square? Like compared to like a straight panel where you just have a set amount of holes? Because if you wave it, then you have more area on more surface with more holes, which gives you more airflow. Does that work like that? The top fan spots are covered by a magnetic dust filter, which, unlike 100% of cases I have seen that have a 1-to-1 copy of this filter, this one comes with a little violet addition. Absolutely unnecessary, but it does add a little accent that every other one does not have, so it's something. And the last 2 fan spots are kinda useless. There are 2 120mm spots on top of the PSU shroud. In a case like the Montech Sky 2, this does make a lot of sense, because there you have air coming in from the bottom and the 2 fans can pick it up and then push it up. Yeah, in here however, there is nothing, because the power supply with its non-magnetic dust filter will cover all of it, so the only air that gets to these fans is whatever this front fan, the bottom front fan, will be pushing underneath the power supply. So that really doesn't make a lot of sense. You could say that they are directing the air that these 2 are pushing underneath the GPU into the GPU, but let's be honest, the GPU fans are already doing that. So that it doesn't make a lot of sense. But we are still not done, because there is one feature that you are really not used to see in this type of case or in this price segment. These are fan spots. There are 2 additional fan spots right next to the motherboard area. So in total we are looking at 11 fans, with only 2 of them being kinda useless. And let's not forget that Raidmax could have drilled a few more holes into the right side panel to... Yeah, sure, having these fans already helps a lot, but not restricting like a quarter of them would have been even better. And now let's get into radiator support. 360 in the top, 120 in the back, 240 on the side, and 360 in the front. Something my 420mm alpha-cool radiator does disagree with, but I can guarantee you that the fitting will be a really hard thing. Like, I would not even try for 20 in the front. It would be too tight for the fitting. Just don't. But for both the front and the top, beware, because one is biting off a piece of the other one. So don't think about going with a 60mm thick one in the front, because although it will fit, but the first fan won't fit anymore in the top, so beware of that. Not forgetting that you're looking at roughly 75mm for the front before you start hitting the PSU shroud. So if you would take a 60mm thick monster radiator and you would snap fans onto that and mount the whole thing inside of the case, instead of having the fans outside of the main chassis, yeah, that wouldn't work. Then for the side-mounted fans, there is another slight issue. As long as you use regular 25mm thick 120mm fans, you will keep 120mm based rad support for the front. But this also means that you lose 280 support in general, because the fans will obstruct the holes. There is nothing you can do about this. And this is kind of important because already due to the design that this case comes with, or in other words, the fact that you will be left with an empty hole or two empty holes, I would strongly recommend to fill them. Plus, they add a lot to performance. So, as far as I'm concerned, the front is 120mm based radiators only, because otherwise you will get into a lot of trouble anyway. So cooling wise as a whole, although not perfect given the restrictions once the fans are in, because this restricts this and something else restricts something else, and the fact that this filter depicted on their website never made it into my unit, you can do a lot in here, especially because of these sidewise mounted fans, those fans next to the motherboard area. They add a lot of performance to the whole build, so you have a lot of possibilities in here. In the back of the case, we got something that resembles cable management options, and to be honest, it's one of the things that they just did not pay much attention to. There is not enough space in the back to fit a lot of cables in. There are no rubber hiders or rubber protections around any hole whatsoever. And the only upside I could find is the location of the CPU power cable hole. This one works perfectly fine and it was so easy to install it. But for example, for the GPU, there is no extra hole in the bottom whatsoever, so you need to route the whole octopus thing from the back, which is a horrible experience. But this is not the only part that they saved some cost on. All the PCIe brackets are breakout only, and not even talking about the fact that we are back to whatever the hell this is supposed to be. And this brings me quite in the middle of my conclusion after my time with the case. It's definitely a budget-friendly case for the first-time builders. Let's not oversell things here. There is nothing extremely premium about this, but instead of cutting cost on everything, I can see that they tried to keep things that are really important, but to cut the cost on things that are not really important, as long as you're honest with yourself. Like the PCIe brackets, they are crap, no sugarcoating there, but the front panel, this is amazing. The cable management is basically back to 2010, but these sidewise mounted fans are giving you a lot more performance. There is no rubber around any hole, but the overall structure and material use is really solid for a budget case. Like it is really solid for a freaking budget case. And this list goes on and on and on. So overall, I am quite happy with the case. It stands on strong feet. The airflow potential is really great. It has a more than enough out-of-the-box cooling capacity. It supports big-ass coolers and big-ass GPUs, so I'm really happy. And I can live with the fact that they decided to go with crappy PCIe brackets, that the cable management is really crap, that there is no hole here, that these two fan spots are basically useless. But because they decided to keep the important stuff and then just budget the hell out of everything what's not essential. And if I think back, I would put this slightly above, for example, a Montec X3 Mesh or Silence Breezer. So as far as I am concerned, if you're looking for a good case for a very tight budget, This is quite perfect with some extra performance if you need it, and out of the box it works perfectly fine, though I would really recommend to fill those 2 fan spots because otherwise it will just look really weird as hell. And it looks good, and out of the box good, because there is an ARGB controller in the back controllable with a button next to the I/O. So for me, recommendation for budget builds, really. But okay, this should be all about the Meshian x603 from Raidmax. At this point, a huge thank you to them for providing this to us. And on a side note, we also have a Discord server, so if you want to join, the link is down below. And of course, we still have channel membership, so if you're looking for a good way to sell your soul for an RGB emoji, that's a pretty good way to go. Additionally, you can rest assured that the income will not only keep the channel afloat, but it will also serve to buy more tentacles for our octopus, because you can never have too many tentacles. Anyway, thank you for watching, and if you want to continue, have a look at our octopus series. I love the project and it turned out really great. Thank you for watching and hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.